Equality. My name is Rubenstein. I am your host for this hour and a half, so you have to bear with me. I am one of the original editors of this publication, and I am also the founder of Open Heroines, which is a safe space and a place to elevate voices of women and non-binary people in open data, open government, and civic tech. I'm also a freelance consultant on many issues, gender data and data strategy. And today I'm hosting this wonderful roundtable with 4 amazing women who are coming to discuss with us on this topic. In the beginning, we have 2, but now we have 4. So I'm very lucky. So we are going to start by introductions, and then I'm going to dive in and say why we're here. So I'm going to start alphabetically. So Blerta, can you please introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing, how it's connected to gender data?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Blerta Thaçi. I come from Pristina, which is the capital of Kosovo. I run an organization, a civic tech called Open Data Kosovo. And this year it's turning 8 years that we are working with the government, primarily increasing the knowledge and awareness of open data in general, and also working with the youth of Kosovo, which composes a huge percentage of the population here. Thank you.
Thank you, Blerta. So now I'm going to jump to Coretta. Coretta, can you please tell us who you are, where you're from, who you work with, how it's connected to open data?
Hello, everyone. My name is Coretta Jonah. I work with EcoMeasures 2030. I'm the Senior Data Capacity Lead for EcoMeasures 2030. EcoMeasures 2030 works in the space of gender equality and data. We both a consumer, we both a user and a producer of open data. Flagship product, the Sdg Gender Index, was just released in April this year, the 2022 version, which has 2 data points, 2015 and the most recent one, and it's available online and freely openly to all gender advocates and feminists to use this data portal to track the performance of the SDGs in relation to gender goals.
Brilliant. Thank you, Coretta. And on next, we're going to go to the other side of the Atlantic. Marissa, who are you? Where are you from? How are you connected to open data and gender?
Good morning for me and good afternoon for the rest of the audience. I am Marisa Miodowski. I am based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I am a gender policy specialist. I studied political science at the University of Buenos Aires, and then I did a master's degree in Brandeis University in the US. I'm currently working at the Buenos Aires City Statistics Bureau, where we work a lot on gender and data. And I am also contributing with Open Heroines as a community coordinator. And Open Heroines, as you probably know, is a network of women and non-binary people working in open government, data, and civic tech. It is a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you, Marisa. And last but not least, Thais. Who are you? Where are you from? How you connect to gender and open data?
Yes, hello to all the audience, and thank you very much for inviting us, or me. In this case, I am Thais. I am based in Barcelona, in Spain. And my connection to gender data is by chance, let's say. I run an organization called Digitalfems, and Digitalfems develops different projects to bring more women in tech. By bringing more women in tech and building more infrastructures with a feminist point of view, let's say, we can do lots of things. And one of the projects we launched was related to gender violence and using data that was released from the open government, from the government in Spain. And then we thought that all the storytelling that we were going to build should be focused on something open, so that we can prove that what we were saying and generating new data sets, blah, 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 could be also downloaded. And then we said, okay, we have had this need. Maybe other feminists or other data collective feminists related to gender data might have the same need. So we built this, what we are very proud to share with you, Gender Data Lab. And Gender Data Lab is a hub of knowledge around data, open data, and gender data. And we will talk more about everything related to this later.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. So as I said, we are here to discuss the state of open data. So this book was written 4 years ago, published in 2019, actually, the OGP, just like pandemic didn't happen after that. But it has a gender equity chapter that was written by Nena and by Anna Brandicescu. Nena still in the Web Foundation, Anna moved to McGill, but it's basically encompassing a lot about what does it mean to have gender equity in open data. One of the things that this chapter said from the beginning is that it's actually looking at gender at the binary, and they know that this is a bit of a lack, but back in 2018, that was something that we also had to deal with, so it's only look at women. So this is something to know, something maybe to think about. Is it a challenge now? Is it an opportunity to think beyond the binary? It also doesn't look at more of intersections of people with disabilities, LGBTQ, just looking at gender here in the terms of sex, women. Then we are looking at also what are the challenges of women to the internet and open data. It actually starts from a lot of women are still not able to connect to the internet in a meaningful way. Like if women cannot access data, how they affect the way that the data is looking, how they affect the data, how it's used, what is the power dynamics that it's going in it. It's also look at the fact that when women do participate in this beautiful thing called the internet, they are more prone to harassment in all shape and size. What does that mean of creation of basically infrastructure for gender and data? It's also then discussed of something that become a lot more relevant during the pandemic. I think we saw it a lot, but it's also something that back then started to speak about in 2018 about the data gaps and the data distortion. Data 2x is mentioned a handful of times in this data handbook about the fact that we need more statistical data that is disaggregated around women to understand what's going on. But also something that started back then and now becoming a lot more prominent is about the femicide and data to fight gender-based violence. So what happened when the data is actually not there and how sometimes data is distorted in order to basically serve patriarchal causes, right? So that's also part of the book. Lastly, the book actually looks at the creators and the people behind the open data movement and the people who are creating data. So yes, data is there in the open, but who are part of the discussion? And the fact that our women who are involved in open data are basically acknowledged, what is their voice on the table. Back then we had conferences, so let's even look about, for example, who are the people who are attending conferences and how. And finally, it ends up with the Me Too. Remember, there wasn't something like Me Too, really back in the height of it in 2018. How does that affect on people who are creating data and using data and the whole cycle? So these are part of the topics that the chapter is looking at. And here in this roundtable, we're actually going to see you all going to help me, even you from the audience, to write the update chapter and to understand what are the challenges and what are the opportunities that we have. I also put a chat in the chat, a link to a document that we're going to work from Google. So you can write your own contribution as the audience, or you can help us with the question, and you can write all of your questions for the panelists in the Google Doc. I will look at it throughout this session as well. I also put one question to the audience there. Actually put two, but start with question number one. Is there any good resources or project that you heard about gender data that we might be missing? Something that you want to add, something that you think it's really important to put forward for us, for me, writing this this update chapter. So now, after doing all of this really lengthy discussion and description of the chapter, and if you haven't read the chapter, I'm going to put a link to the chapter in the Google Doc and in the chat, so all of you can do it. We have a website, really easy to access. But my first question is, what are actually the challenges that we're facing 4 years after writing this chapter? Are they the same? Do we have something new? Are they getting worse? What's going on there? I know we had a pandemic and pandemic affected women. Is there anything like, would it be the same or not? So this is our question for the panelists. Which one of you ladies want to start first? You can raise your hand. If not, I'll just choose randomly. Thaçi, do you want to start first? What are the challenges? I'm gonna
Yes.
give you 5 minutes to tell us what you think are the challenges.
Okay, I'll try to be concrete. So to me, during the last the challenges of the future, or you mean the challenges during these 4 years that we have been facing? It's now
between 2018, 2019, and now. What are the challenges we're facing?
Okay, so I remember a Smart City conference in 2019, and where we invited Catherine Ignacio, and it was very flashy to see her around this, big surveillance, I would say, devices and people selling services, digital services around, the smart cities, and bringing someone to talk about gender and data was very disruptive. So what I think one of the main things that we have moved from 2018 or 2019 till now is awareness about what gender data is and what is the usefulness and potential impact of this new approach to data. I think that people like Data 2X, that have been campaigning around the world saying that without gender data, there is no gender equality. I mean, that is true. And also people like voices like Caroline Criado, explaining to the rest of the world that even not to people very much related to open data or even data, that recognizing the increasing importance of data is to take decisions is crucial. COVID has been a very good example of what happens if you build, vaccines without taking into account the effects on women. And I think that we have been very lucky. And according that the whole drama and tragedy that has been around COVID, I've lost, relatives. So to me, I'm very sad about what happened, of course. But in this sense, I think that this has been something positive, because we have been able to say that gender data is a must. We need this. We need this to understand how the world is. And this has happened very recently. Before that, I think that there was no awareness around it. This to me is one of the important, I think, milestones that we have reached. Also having the monitoring about the Sustainable Development Goals and saying that we do not have enough data and we cannot monitor the public policies is also something that has happened very recently. And I would say that during these 4 years, there have been a lot going on around civil society, gender data activists, researchers, NGOs, or non-governmental initiatives that have been leading the way to generate new data collection, new data modelings, new data processing, and new data stories. Because at the end, we build data, we make it open, but then we need to explain what this data means to everyone, and building new stories about it, and trying to, with the same data, just changing the structure of it. It can give a complete new picture about what's going on. So this is our experience, at least. We built this project called Datos contra el Ruido, and what we used is different data sets that had been, of course, released by the government, and because data is not neutral, and we all know this, the way in which we changed the structures and the structure of these data sets just gave another picture about what was going on with gender violence in Spain. So I think that these 3 ideas, I'm going to stop. I want to listen to the rest. I am fed up of myself because I am repeating always the same. So I want to listen new ideas, freshy ones about it. But this would be my point of view, and I think that we share this all the people that are building genderdatalab.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Thais. I want to ask Marissa. Marissa, what do you think are the challenges? And I know that you had a really interesting project in Buenos Aires also to show some of the challenges of collecting gender data and actually using it in the last 4 years, even after speaking a lot about it before. So with also Buenos Aires. So yes, Marissa.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, More. And I would like to say that the challenges that I have thought about are kind of similar to what Thaçi has just mentioned. But I also want to congratulate her and learn from her project. And I really enjoy being part of this seminar because it is really an opportunity to learn about what other regions, countries, cities are doing. And I want to congratulate her because I believe that the main challenge that we have so far is the use of data. In the last 4 years, since the report was published, at least in Argentina and in the region, in Latin America, there has been significant progress in the production of data with gender perspective. Latin America, as you may know, has been a pioneer in the production and publication of data with gender perspective. It was like long time ago since the Beijing Convention that the Economic Commission for Latin America at the United Nations has been developing a gender indicator system for the region with data that is in open format for almost every country in Latin America. And based on that model, many statistics bureaus in every country and in most of the cities have been producing data with gender perspective. For example, in the city of Buenos Aires, where I work, we have been producing data with a binary perspective, but also including other variables as gender identity or sexual orientation since 2017. And we have been publishing that information and in a way that any researcher, any journalist, any academician, and any policymaker can download it, analyze it, and reuse it. The same has happened at the national level. We have just finished our census, our national census, that for the first time, it has asked every Argentinian about their gender identity. So we will now have a very big picture about another variable that we didn't have in the past. So my point is that we have been producing a lot of data. The same with the civil society. Civil society has been very active, particularly in the framework of the Open Government Partnership, in asking the government to release administrative records. Data from our programs, from our policies, and to release that in an open format. We have that data and in very fancy portals, in different web pages, but to me, this data has not been fully used. We need that data to be more used and by people who probably know how to use it. We have to work more closely with the universities. We have to work more closely and in partnership with our colleagues inside the government in order to examine the data and to ask more questions to this data and to make decisions based on what this data is telling us. So to me, this is really the main challenge. As they was mentioning, the pandemic has given us an opportunity to do that. In Argentina, at least, has become very fashionable to talk about evidence-based policy making. That's true. We have been opening and closing schools or stores or allowing activities or not based on what the data on COVID was telling us. Well, we have to do the same with gender-based data. To me, this is the main challenge so far, at least in the region.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marissa. That was really interesting to hear. I think data use is always a challenge, not only in gender data. I hear it in every project, but I guess that when they come to gender and finding who can use it and how to use it in power dynamic, it's become even more problematic. Like you need to know how to use data, and a lot of the time women don't know how to use data. Not because they don't want to, it's because they've been shown away from it. So I actually want to speak to Blerta. Blerta has done some work with women in data. So I want to ask her what she thinks are the challenges around not only use, but like in open data in general and gender.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to start just like a short introduction about Kosovo, which has some advantages in terms of this new area of introducing open data as a concept, because the infrastructure was not existent at all. Kosovo is fairly a new country, but we have leveraged from some of the benefits, like it's ranked one of the 50 countries in the world with the highest internet penetration, and also has a high population that are digitally illiterate. So what we have been struggling to begin with was the process of opening data in general, because we couldn't maybe focus first in gender data because there was no data at all to begin with. So basically, our journey consists of many struggles in changing this behavior and transforming this way of accessing information from like typical physical folders that you have to request for access in a really traditional way and lengthy one, to having it accessible by default and in a format that is reused in an open format that we were aiming for. So what we have done in the way, in order to include the gender element in all of our initiatives and intervention, is that we have included a lot of young women to be part of this process, so they can understand it not only from the technical perspectives to get experience and hands-on work, but also just to understand like the localization of the data, like what it means for the data to be open, and what it takes for the data and what format. So for example, maybe not 4 years ago, but a little bit more than that, we did this sexual harassment application where we included young women that were aspiring to be engineers. So they built an app for themselves, because there was this research done that sexual harassment is not being reported in the authorities in Kosovo. So we wanted to do a civic tech tools that we can portray the phenomenon based on data. So women were included in that process, and it was very successful. Later on, we also included women in a lengthier process where we worked with municipalities, and we were meeting with heads of municipalities in order to identify what we can digitally transform so we can produce more data. And examples like this are when I listen to the others sharing, you're sharing your struggles because you are focusing on gender primarily, but here in Kosovo we are still in the beginning of the journey of opening data to begin with, but always trying to incorporate all the elements that make sure that the use of it will be beneficial to everyone. So this is a short story, but we will talk more in the next session.
Great. Thank you, Blerta. And last but not least, Coretta, what do you think are the challenges of open data? And equal measures look a lot about where data is missing for policy as well to analysis. So it will be great to hear from you what you think are the challenges of actually getting gender data.
Thank you very much, Mo. So equal measures, as you said, we produced the Sdg Gender Index, and we just released the current edition. So I would say the first challenge I would like to highlight in open data and gender is gender gaps, gender data gaps, which still persist. So as you know, the Sdg Gender Index is a global index that covers all countries, and covers 14 out of 17 of the SDGs. Why would that be? And that is mainly because of data gaps. The unavailability of gender data related to specific SDGs and indicators for that means that we are unable to completely give a complete picture of what exists and what it is. Similarly, you can look at the SDG Gender Index in terms of coverage for country. The 2015 data point, for example, had 135 countries represented, whilst the most recent data point had 100 and whilst the most recent one had 144. So we can definitely see over the period an increase in the availability of gender data, and we can see we are doing well and it's not so terrible. But definitely gender data gap still remains one of the biggest challenges to data that exists. Because for us, each of the indicators of the SDG, we end up having between 3 to 5 indicators for each of the SDG goals. We end up having between 3 to 5 indicators specifically, and we would definitely like to have more. We've had our partners in meetings ask us for specific indicators related to young girls, related to education, which continuously remain missing just because of gender data gap. The second challenge I would like to harp on in terms of is in continuing the thread Marisa started on the use of data. A big issue related to open data is the challenge relating to the use. And here, as my role as a capacity lead draws the issue back to the question of capacity. How much capacity, who uses the data, who needs the data, and how do those the users of the data get to input in the production of the data, and what kind of capacity skills are there available to them, and the opportunity to access these capacity skills. Definitely in the initial report, I saw that capacity was already highlighted as one of the key issues, elements here why the access to open gender data was a challenge. But then there was not so much detailed discussion into the issues of capacity. So I believe with the next report, the updated version of the report that comes on, we focus a lot more on the capacity of users. From our perspective at Equal Measures, we work a lot with gender advocates who are usually in rural areas, hard to access areas, do not have access to internet connection. So when we think of gender capacity tools and gender capacity skills available, we need to think of it in the context of all these groups like advocates who are in hard to reach area, who do not have access to the connectivity needed to access some of these capacity and training skills and the data, which is openly available. So definitely for me, the two biggest issues I would flag here are data gaps that are continuing to persist and capacity related to using the data. Thank you so much, Mo.
Brilliant. Thank you, Coretta. That was great. So I'm just going to put again in the chat for everyone the Google Doc that we are using, so you can write questions there. I have a second question for the audience, and it's coming from something that Coretta said. Who are we missing at the table when we're discussing about gender data? It came up a bit in Open Heroines when we discussed about it. For example, how do we represent Indigenous women in this discussion, specifically when connectivity is really low to them and sometimes non-existent. So this is one group, but if anyone in the audience has more, please write it in the document. So I'm gonna move the roundtable a bit into 180 degrees. So we spoke about the challenges, so I'm gonna summarize it for us. So first we have the question of productions. 4 years have passed, but we still have gaps. We still don't see it everywhere. It became a bit more clear in the pandemic that you need to have a bit more gender data. How do you produce the data and start to think about that? That's always an issue. And that doesn't seem to go away about like how to reuse it, but there are some good things coming up, as we heard. But the second thing is about use. And I have to admit, as someone who works as a consultant with many different clients, use always come as an issue. But I think when it's come to gender data, as I said before, it's even more because women do not get the same opportunities as men to learn how to use data, to learn how to produce data as well. So this is one of the things that we are having. So these are the two main challenges that we discussed in the data pipeline. What I want to move us now is 180 degrees to the other side. What are the opportunities? Like, we're now in 2022, there might be something that we can do, like looking forward. So what do we need to focus on, thinking of really good opportunities for gender equity and data? Who do we want to start first this time? Marisa, you want to start first about opportunities? I'm gonna give it to her. So
sure, with pleasure. I think that we have many opportunities, and let me also tell you something about the question that you posed for the audience about who is missing in this debate. And I think that one group that is missing in this debate are men. As we see here in our panel, we are all women, very committed, very energetic, and very passionate about data. And we need men who also do not know very much about how to read and how to use data. I don't think that it's only a problem of women that we have not had the opportunity to be trained. We need men to be more involved and to see and to read and to, as I said before, ask questions to this data and come together with solutions in order to make gender equality a reality for everybody. Then, and I think, building on that we have a very nice momentum in the world in order to bring more people, men, indigenous people, and all other marginalized groups into the discussion table. Because, as we know, gender is fashionable these days. We have seen many donors publishing big reports on gender data, on gender equality in general. And I think that we have to take advantage of this momentum, because there are resources, there is a political will, and we have understand that that there is a need, that because of gender inequality, the world is progressing less than it would have had if equality has been a reality. So we have to take advantage on that. And on data in particular, I'm going to put now my hat on as an officer working for Statistics Bureau. I think that we have to support these institutions even more. And why I'm saying that? Because it is fashionable these days, but then when it is not a trend any longer, these institutions remain because they are stable. They are part of governments, they produce data, and we have to invest more on them and support them in order to build that capacity that you were mentioning before. We only focus mainly on the producing part of the data. And as I mentioned before, we have many surveys, many censuses. We are producing every year. We increase our amount of data with gender perspective that we are producing, releasing, and publishing in open format. But we need also to continue working on our responsibility of educating others, educating our colleagues in the government, educating civil society organizations, educating journalists in order to use this data more. And for that, we need more resources. We need more people, we need more budget, and we need more institutional stability. And these days, some other governments are creating other agencies like data offices and artificial intelligence units. Well, these are okay, but statistics and Statistics Bureau have been in the world for many centuries, so we need to continue supporting them. The other opportunity that I see, and I see this, and now I put my hat on Open Heroines, is that I see every day, every week, every year, more women involved in data, in gender data, studying, advocating, using. So I see some opportunities there. I have also some information from Argentina. It was released a couple of weeks ago about how the new careers that young people are studying. And science data and many careers related to data are increasing. Like people like me that in the past would have wanted to do some good for the humanity and study political science, these days are studying data science, and I'm very happy for that. So I see some opportunities there with and particularly women, about more women involving in these data fields, and I see that this is something that will bring some good for our space.
It's good to hear. Thanks, Marisa. That's it is true that a lot of more women we see them around. Where do they go in their career path? That's a question that we'll look later. I want to ask Coretta. Coretta, do you think that there are any opportunities that we should work on when it's come to open data?
I mean, definitely. The first opportunity for me, which is key, is the increased availability of data. I was happy to hear a response that says that there is more census data being available. There is more. Whilst we talk about data gap, we acknowledge that increasingly there is more and more gender data becoming available. And how we leverage this opportunity is critical. How we set up who uses it, how we ensure that the right people are getting access to this data that is available, and these people have the right skills and the capacity to utilize this data effectively. It's an critical opportunity that as the Open Data Group, we have to really look into and make sure we leverage. Now, the second thing I would like to say in relation to the challenge of capacity is the fact that during these past couple of years, there have been so many creative and new ways of learning and training. And this is a key opportunity in terms of including especially women who often do not have the time or the space in their schedules to participate in more formal trainings and more formal capacity development strategies and capacity development activities to become a part of open data system and to be users of these data systems as they can acquire the necessary skills using all these various ways in which we have been able to pull in more and more. Definitely, access to internet has increased for certain specific groups who previously did not have access. More creative ways of providing learning tools and capacity development tools have come. We've made sure, and in many, many spaces, when we talk about access, we have even talked about how we provide access for spaces where the internet speeds are not as fast as ours. All these various means have come in the last couple of years, and these have all brilliant opportunities that have to be leveraged effectively. Definitely with seeing what the data can do and doing more with the data and ensuring that all advocates and women in grassroots have access to this data and they use it in advocating for change, we will be able to ensure that more data is made available and more data that is relevant for all women. Thank you.
Brilliant. That was great. Thank you, Coretta. Thais, you now have an interesting project around basically collecting gender data. Is there any opportunity there that you would like to tell us about as well?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that I agree with what Coretta and Marisa said. I mean, absolutely. I think that the fact that at least I'm talking about the Spanish perspective, we are not so evolved as the Argentinians. I think that they are the referral, I have to say publicly, they are they have been for a long while leading to me because there are also organizations around it that have pushed and have done a very good work. And this is an opportunity for the rest of us, I want to say, because we have models. Having models that are succeeding, models of how to create, how to use it, etc., is very important. This on one side. On the other side, if we are able to bring more women into tech, because to me data science, etc., are still STEAM, no, are like parts of technologists, capacities. So bringing more women into these areas will, with no doubt, bring more gender data, quality gender data, and qualitative, projects that can use, gender data. And today, what we have, I think that the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity is to, be part of the algorithmic, era, right? So algorithms are around, and we are not, and these algorithms are today not being fed by good data, let's say, right? So what we need is to produce a lot of gender good data and also try to use these technologies, these softwares, these recommendation engines, whatever the algorithm does, piece of software that can ask the proper questions and can answer the proper, and can give, proper answers. I mean, you can have data, but if you do not ask the proper question, and then this data is not useful. So we're again back to the usefulness of of data, right? So I think that having models around the globe who are working, us, the Spanish, being connected to the Argentinians is very easy because we speak the same language, of course. So this is very important, and at least from Digitalfems, and from Gender Data Lab, we are doing things. We're next week having, for instance, a conversation about models, like a criminal court in Buenos Aires has built a new way of collect data, and they are blowing up minds of the patriarchal, criminal, procedures, and they are exporting this model to Mexico, for instance. So having this and being accessible, this is incredible, right? And I don't know, I would be talking for hours, but I think that these two big fields are, from my point of view, very, very key.
It's brilliant. Thank you that you're saying it, Thaís, because I just saw there's a question from the audience, what type of partnerships and models are working, so we can go back to it in a minute. But lastly, Blerta, what do you think are the opportunities, even looking at the Balkans? Do you think there's something unique to your region, or there's something like completely for everyone else as well, or both?
Yeah, and in addition to what the previous speaker said, I see opportunities also. I will just reconfirm the women in ICT being educated and being the ones that are designing and developing the tools is very important, is in the rise also in Kosovo. And I see that as an opportunity in the future. But in addition, I would not go without mentioning the COVID-19 situation, that this brought many opportunities, and the need for digitalization became even more evident because it pointed out the needs for mechanisms, tools, and adapted regulation for these digitalization processes. But at the same time, a new trend that is also in the rise is the need for data protection and how this data is being produced, used, and also like the right to know how the data will be stored and erased in the future for everyone, because the rise of e-services is something that is being very evident. I know this is something that should have been done many more years ago, because on the amount of budget that the government has spent, but unfortunately misspent in this case. And now in 2022, I'm still mentioning e-services, which would have been evident at least 5 or 6 years ago, and now we would be talking only on the rise of them. So these are just some opportunities, I can say, and they are evident, I can say also for the region, not just for Kosovo.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I want to open this to the floor, which in this case is also here in the Google Doc. If you can't get into the Google Doc, then you can also ask it in the chat and I'll try to monitor. But my first question, it's a bit of a lengthy paragraph, but I'll read it, is what examples of new types of partnerships, maybe we can also call them models, like Thaís said. Open data constituency is sometimes opportunity driven, with both positive and negative associated with this approach. Can the chapter talk about partnership that worked well, worked wonders? How did it happen so that others consider similar partners? So does any of you have a partnership or a model that they would like to share here? But if anyone else has it also from our attendees, please put your answer there in the document. But I saw that Marissa raised her hand, like not even with the emoji, like literally raised her hand. So I'm gonna let her speak. Go, Marissa.
Because I did that because I became very passionate about this project in particular, and I want to share with you all very briefly, and then I can send you the link and everything. But our last production at the Statistics Bureau is, and I put it in the Google Doc for everybody to know, is a care indicator system that we released it in March this year, but it took us a year to produce it. And basically, it is a portal that gathers information about how care is organized in the city of Buenos Aires, and it has a gender perspective because as much as we could. We disaggregated data by sex. It's a binary because most of the surveys that collect data on who is providing the care are disaggregated only by sex. But it also collects data from administrative records from other agencies within the government and data from civil society organizations, community-based organizations that are providing these services and that have this data, because the truth is that not many organizations do have that. We released that in March, and in order to build it, we conducted a series of workshops with journalists, with activists, with academicians who use data or demand data. So we talk to them in order to say, okay, what sort of data are you using? Are you asking for? Are you needing in order to make your work better? And with those discussions, we refined the indicators. So far, we have 65, if I remember well. But the truth is that this is the first step, because based on that is already there for everybody use, because it's in open format. You can download it. Even the code for the system is in open format. So if anybody is interested in replicating it, we can facilitate that. It is the first step in order to continue building with more data and with other sort of partnerships. What we did before was some sort of consultation, a co-creation process. But now, because we want to feed in this access from civil society organizations with more data, we are building new partnerships with those who are interested. Because sometimes we say that we have to work more collaboratively, we have to do partnership, we have to build teams. But for that, you need time. And for that, you need some people, and we are coming again back to the challenges. We need people in the other end who have some literacy skills in data building. And this is not so easy to find, even if we, thank you very much, Ty, for your compliments, even if we are models and if we are if we have done some progress, this takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of will in order to be able to collaborate to construct this data together. But I think that we have a good example here, and I will be happy to share with anybody who wants to learn more about our last project.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marissa. I think this is a great project. Marissa, if you can also drop a link into the project in the chat and in the Google Doc, that would be great. Does any of our other panelists have an example of a model or a partnership that worked that they want to share with the audience? Thaçi, also.
Yes, yes. Well, I want to talk about a small gender data lab is a lab, right? So we are testing and building partnerships with other women organizations is key, because they are the ones that are, at least our experience is on one side what we do, and we are partnering with other women organizations, as I said, that are collecting data and they have already this, gender perspective around how to collect data. And what we try to build is the data set and making it public and raising a campaign about how to, understand what is going on in the cinema industry, for instance, in Spain, and where are the women, right? Where are the women? So we were partnering with them in also like trying to generate good questions around how are we going to ask the industry who is, scripting the movies and, and film and shooting them, and who is participating in this industry. And the same with the music industry, because there are obviously gender gaps, right? We can talk more about this, but I don't want to talk about our projects. I want to talk about other projects, which I find, because of the imposter syndrome, et cetera, much more interesting than what we do. And this case,
a lot more imposter syndrome. Yes, so please do speak about the project. Yes. This is why you're here.
Yes.
For. It's all good.
Yes. but thank you, Mar. No, but I think that, for instance, something very impactful, and we were colleagues, and we met in this Ilda, meeting with Catherine Ignacio a while ago with this Generoidato, this Argentinian collective, and they are working on this. To me, this is a very impactful. This is like a very positive social impact about how is the judicial system generating, categorizing what's going on gender violence, right? Like this is the challenge. Even the for instance, the European portal about gender violence, it is very difficult to generate a standard because crimes are differently typified. I don't know if this word exists in English. I hope it does. And like, how are we, relating what type of crimes, and how is this, judicial language being transformed into something understandable for the rest of the people? This is a big challenge. But what these people, Jan and Generoidato, are doing in this criminal court number 10 of Buenos Aires, is they have found someone who was, as Marisa was saying, like very, and also what Coretta was saying, like very, very much, she has a very hard skills on data science and gender. So she has been able to convince the judge, to, and this is what we're going to discover next week, how having two different systems of data collection, like the official one and another one on top of that would increase the way to understand what is going on with gender violence, and then generating a software that can, process this information very easily and, output what is going on. So to me, this is like, like a revolution, and because it has not been done, it's very difficult to get into, the judicial, patriarchal system, I would say. And I mean, to me, that is blowing up my mind. Like, that is a model, that is a reference for sure. So they have not only done this in Buenos Aires, but also they are exporting this to Mexico. So that is the proof that, it is working, and it is being, expanded to other courts, even if they do have different crime types, etc. So this is the interesting part of it, right? So I think that we need to take an eye on that in the next weeks. They were yesterday publishing like the paper, so it's really new about. This is like super yesterday. It was yesterday we're tweeting about the paper, etc., etc. So I don't know. This is like super brand new, and I think it's very interesting.
So brilliant, thank you. And I will have an eye on it. We should have had people from EQUIS, from Mexico, and Justice for Women, but unfortunately they can't come, but I will have an eye on this too. And Coretta, you raised your hand. Do you have an example of a model? I see you put something in the document, so if you can share.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. So the model I'd like to talk about is one that eCommerce 2030 in partnership with Tableau Foundation just recently ended our Data Fellows program, where we identify 16 data journalists from India and Kenya who underwent a period of training through coaching period on how to do data communication, data visualizations, and use of data. Now, the interesting thing about this program is that at the end of the program, each of these data journalists got to produce an output which was tangible and can be used. And they presented on so many different topics related to women's health, women's land rights issues. And they also created electronic and print outputs which were accessible by a wide range of women. So such a model for us, I believe the model was extremely successful. The data fellows were, at the end of the day, each and every one of them was able to create some tangible output, a database, which was presented and used in practically, and this gave them a set of skills that they could use and apply in their work, because all of them were already data journalists. So this model, I believe, really, really works.
No, that's great, and I think it's answered another question that we got, which maybe we have more example, which was, can you share any example of great programs of development and training of data scientists, especially those which prioritize women, other marginalized groups, and feminist anti-oppressive approaches, and who is running these and where? I know that Blerta was doing a bit of that in Kosovo. I don't know if it was more feminism or anti-oppressive, but Blerta, do you want to say the stuff that you've done? It wasn't specifically on data per se, but it was connected. So yeah.
I mean, I guess I cannot answer specifically because as I was hearing the question, I was like, can I also know that those programs? I would be also interested in. But what I can share is that I mentioned in the beginning that we do a lot of capacity building for young people. So we did a lot of coding classes. And just this presentation on how they can improve their skills and be employable, because the demand for these ICT positions is very, very high. It's increasing by day, and many companies are opening here in Kosovo. So that's what we wanted to contribute with. So the context or the programs that we have done are basically based on the local needs, but they can be also used maybe for others. But I don't have specifically anything that, I mean, I have projects and data sources, but not like programs that someone can learn because they are in the local language. So we want, because there is so much in English and other languages, so we wanted to do something in the local context and language as well.
I think this is a really important point, because a lot of the time when you look at data science, you assume that everyone knows English and they need to do it, but also no, a lot of the time, if we're looking at marginalized women, we have to customize and we have to do it in all languages. And it's hard because even finding someone an expert who can translate it and put everything in context is really valuable and not always there to do that for women. So I think it's actually a really good point, Blerta, to point out. Does anyone else have an example for this program? I can also jump in. I can say that in Open Heroines, we just started a new project named our Open Heroines Lab, which will bring heroines to collaborate together on a topic. Maybe we should put something around data science project and see how a bunch of women from open and non-binary people from Open Heroines can collaborate together to create some kind of a program that other people can use with a feminist lens. So I'm putting it a mental note here, and Marissa will also put a mental note for us to discuss this in our labs project. But if anyone has more example, please jump in. But if not, I can move for the next question. I guess I put it for the next question, but if you in the audience know something, we're missing something, please write it down. I know that Data Feminism had a course that they've done. It wasn't specifically data science, but they had a course around feminist trading of data issues, which I think it's also is important. But it's not the same as how do you train the next generation of data scientists to be more mindful of this. Cool. So our next question is, much research funding calls for open data practices. Have you found that private and states funders of, and then it started, let's say particularly medical and health research, also ask for data to be broken down by gender or sex and to be captured? And if so, are researchers supported to know how best to do this? I think this is mostly about data collection and like, how do you think is the best way to support like people who now have to put gender data out there? Is there any kind of tip that you will give them about like what to do specifically if the funder asks them to do that? And what are the privacy concern? I'm in England now, so I have to say privacy instead of privacy. So what are the privacy concerns that they have that they need to think about when thinking of gender disaggregated data? It's a hard question. Marissa, something from the experience of the work that you've done in care, because there's a lot actually of issues with privacy that's going on there. Any practices that you can share about that?
Well, for the care indicator system, we have been using data mainly from surveys. at 80% is coming from surveys that is totally anonymous, and we are regulated by the statistics secret law, so there is an issue there. But with administrative records coming from other agencies within the government and from the civil society or community-based organizations, we ask them to provide the data completely anonymous. So there is not an issue there with we just need a row that says if the person receiving or providing the care service is a man or a woman, or if they happen to have like a gender identity that most of the organizations do not collect that data, but we do not have any name and any personal information on that. We do ask about the level of professionalization, if they have studied in order to provide the care or not, because we want to measure how professional or not are the human resources providing these services. But I think that the question was also asking about some other concerns, not necessarily with privacy. And something that have worked very well with us before conducting all these surveys, asking on gender identity or sexual orientation, were three things. The first was to read the international literature about that. And as you mentioned, for example, the UK has walked a long way on that, with these limitations or not, but learning from others' mistakes is also very important for any institution, any organization who is going to embark in collecting data with gender perspective. So read and ask about what others have done first is very important. The second one is test the questions with certain populations and also build these questions with communities that identify themselves as non-binary or with specific gender identities. This also has worked very well in the city of Buenos Aires. We have there another model of partnerships was to work together with these organizations and see what they were interested in, what was significant for them in order to later make decisions, advocate for new bills, for new regulations, and so forth. And the third thing that to bear in mind is then later come back and share that data with these people that have been at some point involved, because there is always margins for improvement, always. So even if you have following the protocol and done everything as it is asked, you always have the chance to commit a mistake. So coming back and having this dialogue between data producers and data users is really, really important.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marisa. Anyone else from our roundtable seated women wants to add to it? Or Thaçi, are you saying yes? Okay, go.
Yes, no, I just wanted to say that we also produce some, we're quite new. We've been existing as such only for 5 months now, but we are generating also surveys. They are anonymous. We've got the GDPR thing, so it's quite, we need to be very, 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 very careful with the privacy thing. But what it is interesting, I think, if any, I'm not going to say something like, I'm not going to reveal anything because I have more questions than answers, let's say. But my point would be here, like, we were trying to generate a dialogue with the police officers, who are the ones that attend women when they, get into the police space and they want to put a claim, right? What type of information are they collecting, and trying to, generate a lab thing here, right? Like, why? And then the privacy issue is the first stopping, let's say, reason for not to, to not try to understand what is the problem with the data they are collecting, right? And I know that police are not the most dialogue. No, I mean, they are the order, so they are not open to debates. They have to make the law. But in this sense, I think that if anyone in the audience has got some examples or testing, how are they interacting with police around how this data is being gathered, because sometimes we're, at least in Spain, we're starting to see how algorithms are operating with this data, and this data is being sent to the judge anonymously, and it is the judge who says, according to what this software does, if this person needs extra protection or not. So we are talking about serious things, and my question was here to the audience and to you and my co-panelists, if you have heard about any experiment lab on how to generate a participative process with the data collectors, like the institutional data collectors, right? Like as social, I mean, as the civil society agents that we are. I would love to know how, if there's any experience around it, and if this experience has succeeded, or I don't know.
If I'm not mistaken, the Femicide Data Standard done some work with the Uruguay police around this. I'm not sure, but I will try to put a link to what Alda were writing about it, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer some of that, because I know that they done it for the Femicide standard. Any other comments from our panelists? Because I have a question, but I can wait if you have any more suggestion. Should I jump to my question? So we discussed here a lot about like one of the limitations that the chapter says at the beginning is this chapter is about gender equity, and we're actually discussing about sex data more than gender data. We discuss about men and women as male and female. But as we're coming now to 2022, we do see that there is a big discussion about gender or sex data. I know that in the UK, where I'm sitting now, there is a big discussion about actually and you can see it in the census as well, which is a bit of a shame. Don't collect gender data, collect sex data, because this will not be good for women. But I do think that we need to discuss about how to get out of the binary, and more than that, how to be more intersectional, because what benefit a white woman would not benefit a Black woman in the UK, for example. And we see it in the gender pay gap, right? We know that white women will earn more than Black women, or in the case of the States, Hispanic women, etc. So do you think that we still need to do a lot of work on mainstreaming this discussion, or how can we mainstream the discussion that it's not only about the binary, it's actually looking at all things encompasses women, abled women, LGBTQ women, like what do you think we need to do so that will be incorporated in the data? Like, are we not there yet, or we still need to look at it as like men and women and then move up? I know that I'm struggling with it because it's not always that easy to collect all of this data. It's part of the patriarchy to keep it of like abled white men. But yeah, a thought and a question.
To me, I think that the more that we publish and we show these gender inequality gaps, the more we inform the debate, and we see that and we advocate for more data to be collected with probably not necessarily surveys, because surveys are expensive and they do not necessarily capture all the diversity that the societies have. Even if we as a Statistics Bureau have been collecting data on gender identity and sexual orientation for many years now, when you want to cross that data with other variables as related to the labor market, for example, you can't, because the sample is not representative enough. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of collecting data, as Thais was mentioning, through administrative records, like at the police, at the hospital, at the school, in every institution or agency that where the state is present. We should collect that and publish and show how different the experiences are. On the other hand, what I think that we are always talking about data, and we are in our minds, we are always thinking of quantitative data. And sometimes these different experiences are better known through qualitative data. Like these stories of lives that we can collect through an interview, through a video, through other instruments are really powerful, and they could make us to think that women are not necessarily the same, and that we are facing different sorts of inequalities. And as you mentioned, what works for some does not work necessarily for others. So I think that the combination of quantitative and qualitative methods is really powerful, and we should be working on that until we have like very good massive records of how the population of any country, any city, any town looks like.
Brilliant. Thank you. Coretta, do you have any type of response to that as well? I saw that Alda wrote a bit in the chat as well, but I was wondering if you have something to say.
Definitely, intersectionality is a key issue when it comes to gender data. And if we say there are gender data gaps, these gaps are worse at the intersection. The rural girl, there is almost no, the youth, there's almost no data. So definitely data has to be all encompassing. It has to point for data to show us the clear picture of what exists. It has to cover every person. So the new chapter definitely has to explore, not just weaving it into the chapter, but weaving it into the entire book, the issue of intersections, which is critical. In our index, one of our, always when we interact with our partners, they highlight the need for more data on disability, on the situation of women, rural women, and specific groups such as this that are impacted very, very much differently by the lack of data and by the lack of access to data. I hope that helps.
Super helps. I think rural and city is something that I usually forget, but it is important in a lot of context, and we should take it in for granted. Not take it in for granted. Anyone else want to chip in? Or should I move to our next question? Although I see that we have a lot from the chat from the audiences. So if anyone from the audience also wants to write in the doc, that would be good. But if not, I have one last question for you as women who work at open data. What is the biggest thing that can support you in your work on gender open data? And I want each of you to think about it for a second and then say, like, if you can get all the support in the world to keep doing your work, which is fantastic and it's hard, like what will be the biggest support out there that you think we need to write in this chapter? Like what women who works in the field really need, besides probably piles of money so we can make all the gender data in the world, but you can also say pile of money if that's what works. Because just to remember, women projects do not get as much money as other projects as well. There's a really nice article from Hewlett about it before the pandemic about the funding of women projects, especially in Global South initiative. And if you want to jump in and say what will be the biggest supportive thing that they can get? Blerta, you have any kind of an answer, or are you still thinking?
It's such a challenging question, actually. I mean, biggest support out there for my context and my organization, particularly in order for us to continue striving and working with the increased intensity on opening data. I just think we still need more capacities, more knowledge, more experiences like this, and more activities like this. I don't want to shout like big things right now, but like just having this meeting today and, for example, all the links that you all shared, I get inspired, and I don't have to be like recreating everything from scratch, but I can take practices and experiences that others have done around the world that were successful, so I can recreate them and produce it in my own context. So I guess collaboration would be this is one of the biggest support out there. And then from there, things develop, and I guess you can then fundraise for it and take all the stakeholders that you need and all the steps there are. But I guess collaboration would be one of the biggest support for me, especially since we are still in the beginning of the journey, so compared to other countries.
Brilliant. Thank you, Blerta. Anyone else want to jump in? Or should I pick you?
Well, I would say that building on what we have discussed during this morning, something that we would love to have is, it could be like more resources, but one very important resource that is missing, that women lack mainly, but it's time to dedicate to, when we have the data produced, to disseminate it, to educate, to work with others in order for them to use the data. As I have been mentioning in many occasions here, we are also responsible for this data to be used. We are not only producing the data and leaving the data there in the space for others to come and take the most of it, because this is not happening. So I believe that if we could have like the possibility to extend our days, or to bring more people into our teams in order to use the data and to make the case, the business case, the case study on how using this data is very powerful, is efficient for policy making. We have some examples, but we need more. And I would love to have to see some at least a box or some part of the book talking about that. Because sometimes when you have the example, the concrete example of how the data was used, how was reflected into decision making, and how this has impacted in others' lives, to me, this there is no more discussion about that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marisa. Thais, what do you think is what will be supportive for your work?
I mean, besides funds, which has already been highlighted, let's say, I think that at least from my point of view, it would be very useful is this super connection with all of the data feminists and gender data advocates, let's say, right? So we need to learn so much, and at the end, internet, I mean, I am a boomer. I belong to, I started to use internet in the last century, imagine. So my first work was in 1999, the internet, and there is a mantra always in the online world, which is we are building it and we are learning by doing. So learning by doing is a mantra that we need to move forward. And in this case, this field that to me has the potential of, a revolutionary potential, because it is a new way to understand how social facts and society is. To me, we need a month conference meeting or something like this, because we need to share ideas, we need to share links, we need to, and to me, to learn a lot. If someone has built, a data set and a data modeling that is working, then and I get to know this, I'm making my colleagues' time very much useful, and it's impacting. It's a collaborative thing, right? So maybe the future of gender data has to do with, with digital commons, right? And we need to see this field as a digital common. I mean, and I don't know. I'm not being very concrete. I'm being very abstract and very, I wish, but I think that and this is what my colleagues have already said, right? Like collaboration, sharing knowledge, having time and funds. This would be my four, my four wishes.
So I put in the chat a bit of self-promotion. Open Heroines, our network is open to any woman, including trans women and non-binary people, to come and discuss and collaborate. And sometimes we even give mini grants to get you time to think and write about it, because we know that there's a lack of leadership coming from voices of non-binary and women, you can always speak to Marissa or me about this, and we can do. But there's also a forum. So if you don't know us and you want to speak, and we're restarting a lot of stuff, so it's really nice to be in the community and discuss it now. You can. Blerta is already a part of our community, for example, as well. So it's really cool to see a lot of people. So last, Coretta, what will help you as a woman to do your work well in this field, and like what support do you need as well?
It's interesting because it seems everyone has reiterated this exactly what I wanted to say. So basically, it's a true partnership in a way in which we share openly, share learning, and we learn from each other and learn with each other, learning together in such a way that we do not repeat what is already being done, and we are able to learn from the experiences of our other partners and bring us together in more frequent ways to be able to learn more deeply from each other, basically. I mean, you said we shouldn't talk about fans, so.
Brilliant. Thank you, Coretta. I can say from my own experience that I agree with all of that. But if I would like to add, I think it's really important for men to be visible and to show their mistakes that they're doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion when it's come to data. I think that if a lot more men who are leading initiative will discuss and say, we forgot to put this element here, here is why we forgot this, and here is how we're gonna basically do it again. Or even about use, I could have used that, but I just didn't think that I need to look at this. I didn't think that I need to be intersectional. I think that will be a really good support to all of us women and non-binary people that are doing this. So just to let you know, if you are a man and you are in this roundtable, or you're just watching us, please be vulnerable about your mistakes and about how to correct them and how to work together, because only showing the successes and not speak about when someone could have done better. It's also for women, right? We also need to share when we could have done something better. But I think when it's come for men on the topics of gender equity, it's even go more to length. And it's even helped to others, specifically men, to listen to this and to feel more comfortable to share and to collaborate and do it. It's building a bit on Marissa's comment from a while back in this conversation about why men also are important in this conversation. So this, I think, is one of the biggest support. Like, we also need men to say, this is enough. We want gender equity, because feminism is important for everyone, us men included. So that was from me. Thank you, Fernando, for writing this in the chat. So this was from me, and unless there are any other questions, if anyone has a question, I'm giving you 30 seconds to write it in the chat now if you want. But if not, I'm gonna move it up to Muchiri to summarize what we've done and tell you about the rest of our fabulous webinars that are happening. The State of Open Data book is not only about gender. We discuss about geographies, we discuss about themes like anti-corruption, we discuss about global issues, and we discuss about stakeholders as well. So there's a lot more to come, and there were 2 brilliant roundtables yesterday as well that I tell to all of you to watch as well. But here is Muchiri, so he will tell you more about it.
Thank you, Mo, and thank you everyone for a very enlightening session. This is the part where I ask everyone for to give a round of applause, but Zoom doesn't help us with that. So you have to take a round of applause from just me. One hand clapping. Thank you so much, Mo. Thank you everyone for making time to join us today. These roundtables are part of an effort to refresh the State of Open Data report, as Mo mentioned. A lot of the writing for that was done in 2018. Book was published in 2019. As of course, a lot has happened since, and even just this discussion, and the highlights that have been pulled by the panelists just show just how much can change and change so very quickly, especially given the context of a pandemic and some of the economic pressure that's happening on many of our countries. We had organized 5 of these roundtables. This was the second one. Our third roundtable in the series starts in 37 minutes. So we hope that you'll join us for that one as well. It's open data and climate change climate action roundtable chaired by Johannes Friedrich. We're hoping that we will see you there. Tomorrow we have 2 other roundtables, one on open data and national statistics, that's chaired by Sheda Badi, that will be at 1300 GMT. And then we will have our second for the day and the last of our series tomorrow at 1500 GMT on open data and anti-corruption, and it will be hosted by Jorge Flores. So we look forward to seeing you at those. So I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Particularly, I loved the energy in the chat and the discussions there. I was already taking notes, learning so much, and I'm sure we shall move some of this content onto some of the platforms and share it, because I'm sure this didn't make it. The content on the chat didn't make it onto the YouTube live stream. So for those of you who are on YouTube, who will be either watching this recording or who are there live, be on the lookout. We shall move some of this content onto the D4D website as well, and then you can jump in. My name is Mushiri Nyaga from the Local Development Research Institute, and on behalf of D4D.net, thank you very much, and see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.